Hello, welcome back. On a chilly winter's day there's nothing better than a bowl of lovely homemade soup, so I'm going to show you my minestrone recipe. Now this makes enough for 6 or 7 portions and you need quite a big saucepan or casserole dish. So if you want to make less than that, just simply halve everything. So the first thing to do is to get the onion chopped into quite small pieces, and then it goes in the pan and it just gently cooks with the bacon. And then the bacon, I'm going to use scissors for this, and I need it into pieces that are long and narrow really. It doesn't matter what sort of bacon you've got. If you want to use streaky, that's fine. I'm using, I've used the streaky end of this and I'm using just the back section of the bacon. And scissors are the best way to go with this. Now we take that over to the cooker and we just put a little bit of oil in and we get that to fry ever so gently, and while that's cooking we'll get the vegetables prepared. So give it a stir, get them mixed together, a little bit of oil, because these pans do stick if it's not got a little bit of oil in there. So we'll just leave that. Can separate out the layers of bacon so that they are not just in big clumps, and we'll just leave that to cook very gently while we go back and prepare all the vegetables. So what we need for our minestrone is a couple of carrots, a couple of leeks, 2 sticks of celery, and I've got the end of the old one and the beginning of the new one, and a piece of cabbage which is about a fist size, that's perhaps a little bit bigger, and also some garlic. So what I'm going to do is get all of these vegetables prepared and chopped and into a dish. The thing about minestrone is that you don't use leftover vegetables, they need to be fresh and in season, and they all need to be about the same sort of size pieces because it's about how it looks. This doesn't get mashed or chopped up with a stick blender. This is how it's going to look in the dish, so all the pieces need to be pretty much the same sort of size. So take a bit of time getting your vegetables ready. Sometimes these no-peel carrots grow with little tiny stones in the skin, and I like to take that off because you know there will always be somebody in your family who gets that little bit of grit. There we are, that's all the carrot chopped. Now I'm going to go on to the celery next, and this is where it was joined onto the base and it's a little bit tough there, so I'm going to take that off. And the top end sometimes dries out, so I'll take that off as well. And then with something that's as long as this, it's always easier if you just cut it in half before you begin, and then go down the middle. Use a bridge always to keep your fingers safe. So you've already got slightly smaller pieces, and then across to get your little bits that are pretty much the same as your carrot. And if you've got a piece like this, you can use the leaves, don't throw those away, that's perfectly okay. So just take the end off and just chop all the way to the top. There we are, so that's the celery. Now at this stage you might want to just go and stir your onions and bacon just to make sure they're not sticking, just give them a little bit of a stir round. And then go on to the leeks. These are fresh from the garden, and you just obviously make sure they're very clean, so you slice the roots off and the nasty bits at the top, and then put your knife in, open it up and wash in between all those layers because of the dirt. And then just cut that again. That's our first one. You can see where I've just cut in there, opened it up and checked for dirt in all the layers. And if you start at the dark green end and work towards the white end, it all stays together, it doesn't fall apart so much as you cut. Right, that's our leeks. Now the next thing is our cabbage, and this is a piece of Savoy cabbage. It can be the dark green greyhound, I think it's called. Doesn't matter really, but it's a nice addition, and for this you just want slivers really, if you can get them, but don't worry too much. The one thing I would say though is that you don't want that great big piece of heart right from the centre. There we are, that's our cabbage. The last thing is the garlic. 2 bulbs of garlic, and they need to be chopped finely, and they are going to go in with the bacon and the onion before the other vegetables go in and just be cooked for a little bit. So papery layers off. And then that gets chopped finely. Right, so that's my garlic. Now, when the onion and the bacon is all softened and the onion is quite transparent, I'm going to put the garlic in and just cook that for a minute or two before I add all the other ingredients. So that's my dish full of vegetables. It's going to be a tin of tomatoes. It's going to be 3 pints of water, to which I shall add 2 stock cubes. And then at the end, you add some beans of one sort or another. So you can add cannellini beans that you've washed and drained and washed. If you want to make half the quantity, so you can't get a small tin of cannellini beans, you can actually use a small tin of baked beans. So beans of one sort or another, and then of course you add some pasta, and that can be broken up pieces of spaghetti, or if you're wanting to encourage a child to eat this, you could use interesting shapes. And I think these are farmhouse shapes. You could put something like that into it, or you could add little tiny stars, or whatever little tiny weeny pasta you can get. Otherwise just break spaghetti. In the north of Italy it would actually be rice that goes in, but in southern Italy it tends to be pasta. So garlic will go in next, and then the vegetables. So I'm going to go over to the pan and see what's happening with the bacon. Now the onion has softened quite nicely and the bacon is cooking. There's a little bit of oil in the bottom, but that's absolutely fine. So now to that I'm going to put in the garlic, and we'll give that just a minute or so and turn the heat up now. What that will also do is get rid of any of that liquid that comes out of your bacon, because sometimes it's got that sort of milky stuff that comes out, and you can evaporate that off. Right, at this stage I'm now going to add all the vegetables. So that's my bowl full of cabbage and carrot and leek and celery. That goes in. My tin of tomatoes goes in. You can see this is going to make a lot. And then, 3 pints of water. I want to rinse my tin with a bit of that. So that's 1 1/2. I'm going to refill that and add another, and in goes my second 1 1/2 pints. Now I'm not going to put it all in, I'm going to put in about 2/3 of it, because I can always add more later. There we are, I've left 1/2 pint in there, so 250 mils. Give that a jolly good stir. And then we put in our stock cubes, and I'm going to add 2 chicken stock cubes at this stage. Just break them up and drop them in. Oh, dropped it. There we are. And as that comes to the boil, the stock cubes will dissolve. And that now, when it's boiled, is going to have about an hour to simmer. So it's quite a slow process. So keep an eye on it, get it up to the boil. And when it's had an hour, that's when you add your beans, either your drained and washed cannellini beans or your tin of baked beans. And you also put in your broken up pieces of spaghetti. So there we are, we'll get that to boil, put the lid on and give it an hour. Now, our soup has had an hour. It's smelling absolutely wonderful. At this stage, we put in our rinsed beans, or baked beans, don't rinse those for goodness sake. So cannellini beans, a bit of a stir, and the spaghetti, or whichever pasta you've chosen. So sprinkle that in, and then you need to get that under the liquid so that it cooks. Now at this stage, I don't know if you remember, but I saved a little bit of water because this could be the point to add a bit more if you think you haven't got enough free liquid for the pasta, but actually I'm okay, I don't want to add that. So if yours has boiled and lots of steam has been produced and you've lost some of the liquid, you may want to add a bit more water at this point, but if your lid fitted well, you should be okay and you shouldn't need to add any more. So the lid goes on, get it back up to a nice boil, and that will take as long as it takes for the pasta to cook. So that depends on the size of the shapes you've got. So it might just be 10 minutes, it might be 12, but you can check that when you think they're done, just see how tender they feel. So there we are, back with the lid on for another 10 minutes. There we are, our soup has had its extra 10 minutes and the spaghetti is cooked. The beans are beginning to sort of break down a little bit and it's looking jolly good. Now it is a lot of soup, so if you can't use as much as this, it's really easy to halve this recipe, but equally you could freeze whatever's left over, and these pour and store bags are really useful for that kind of thing. So think about that when it's cold, but all you need to do now is serve it in a dish with some crusty bread or some toast and some parmesan cheese on the top, and that would be a really traditional minestrone. So I hope you like this one. My mouth's watering. Have a go and let us know how you get on. Bye for now.